If we could also include in our deputation our member of staff, Mr. John Howard, if after 9B, if Mr. Howard could come forward at that time to explain to us the emerald ash borer situation in Owen Sound. I do believe it's an important issue that I know many people here tonight, and I know everyone at home as well are going to be interested in hearing about that particular situation. So, Mr. Howard, if you could come forward at 9C, that would be helpful. Right now, though, I'll invite Mr. Bill Murphy, representing the Roxy Theatre, and Morag Budgeon, representing the Artists Co-op, and Billy Goodkat, with regards to the mural project at the Roxy Theatre. If you would step forward, please. And apparently I'm inviting Virginia Eichhorn from the Tom as well. Welcome.
This is a great project that we've initiated this year. A few months ago, Ali Boltman came to the gallery and was talking about the Roxy coming up with its 100th anniversary and wanting to know if there would be a way with partnering with the Tom in order to do something to help celebrate and commemorate that. One of the phrases that Ali used at that point is about the theater being a window to the world, and that had great resonance with us. And so that was what we decided to use as the theme. We also were really interested in having youth involved, where they would be getting great experience working with professional artists, working with the gallery staff, and having that opportunity to really develop a project on a large scale from concept to actually total completion. So we've got some great young people, as well as a professional artist, Billy Goodkat, who has great experience with doing murals. And we began the process of putting together our Legacy to the World group, which also then it seemed very natural to invite the Artists Co-op to become part of it. And I'll let Heather Hughes, who's the assistant curator at the gallery and who's been working very closely with the group, to just explain a little bit about it as well.
Thank you. So I'll get the group to just stand up. We wanted to involve youth, so that includes senior high school students as well as post-secondary students. A lot of these guys are very ambitious. They're excited about the project, and that's the wall. We've had a few meetings so far, and we've developed the framework for the idea, Window to the World. And I'll get Billy to come up for a brief second, and just explain the premise of how he interprets Window to the World and how that's the end of the show. Whoops. Just explain the perspectives of the different theater, and so if you want to step up for a second.
Welcome to council, Billy, and I have to comment on what an excellent last name you have.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So this isn't the actual final sketch. This is more of just an outline of where the kind of pieces would go on the wall, essentially. But the idea is that when you look at the piece, when it's finally done, it'll be there'll be windows set on the wall, right? That, like, when someone's standing at a distance, they'll be looking into the theater, and it's kind of going to be like from the left side going to the right. It'll be a story about the creation of theater, and then it's acting out, and then the final on the right hand side, the final section will be like the viewpoint of the audience, like their experience of theater. So essentially, it'll be a story from going from left to right, kind of thing. So, and then each person has come up with their own sketch and their own idea, and develop that. And each of those boxes there is a rough kind of positioning of where those pieces will go, and they all fit within that narrative. So that's basically what it is.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing it too.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi.
Good evening.
It was great when Virginia and Heather approached the Owen Sound Artists Co-op. It seemed like a perfect tie-in. We have through the generosity of a Trillium grant, a 4-year program to promote and support youth in the area. So 8 months of the year we have a gallery that's strictly youth-oriented. Many of the artists over here have been involved in the co-op in many of our programs. So we are in this gallery going to dedicate a month of October to show the documentation of the creation of this amazing mural. So there'll be probably video, photographs, maybe some paint cans and spattered clothing, but just to show the process, the historical process of building this up. So for the month of October, we'll have that in the Legacy Gallery, again, promoting the youth and promoting the mural. So we're really excited to be involved with it.
Thank you.
Your Worship and Councillors, Owen Sound Little Theatre is certainly very excited to be part of this project as well. We've partnered with the TOM in the past on a couple of fundraising projects, and one of our mandates is to do sort of co-productions with people. And this time we're very excited to be having local artists of all ages help us beautify our building, especially with the 100th anniversary of the Griffin Theatre coming up next year. And this will coincide very nicely with the redevelopment of the facade on the 9th Street face and the back entrance. So we're very delighted about the project and the concept of the project. So we're in full support and delighted to be doing what we can to promote other visual arts in the city. We hope that our plays bring a window to the world anyway. So on the inside, so now we'll have a window on the world to the outside. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this project to our attention.
So if there's any questions or comments from members of council, we'd be happy to respond.
I'm sure there will be.
Yes.
Councillor Lemon.
I just think this is one of the best examples I've seen of cooperation and working together. It's also going to enhance the downtown experience. And I think this is going to be something that will be a draw to the downtown for people who want to see this. And I feel very strongly that art in a public place, which was the Culture Committee was pushed for a few years ago, this is going to be an example of something that adds to the whole downtown. And I think this is absolutely great. And I think it's wonderful that we have this unique partnership between very diverse groups and everybody working together. And that's fantastic for our community and reflects on our community.
Thank you, Councillor Lemon. And this is actually the first of a series of projects that we are looking to do of this nature. So we are looking to have youth involved with working with artists from all different disciplines, but creating public artwork throughout Owen Sound. And again, very much with looking at, what is our history, what do we have that's unique as a community. So those will be kind of the themes that we'll be looking to celebrate. And I think for this being the initial one, it's already been a tremendous success.
Got a number of speakers, Councillor Body and then Councillor Purdon.
Do you want to go ahead first? So I can wait.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Purdon.
So, congratulations to all of you. A wonderful project and a wonderful example of collaboration and making things happen. So, I think we can all learn from you and your work that you're doing on the creative side, but also on the collaborative side. So, really looking forward to seeing the finished product. And I just had the question about when is the kind of time frame for the actual painting and when you're hoping to have it all done?
Through you, Your Worship, we are hoping to actually start the actual painting very, very soon. Weather is an issue, and of course with some of the young people that are involved with this, they'll be heading off to university, very soon. So ideally we'd be hoping within the next week or so to begin.
Councillor Chamberlain?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if there was a way that council could serve you. I think there was something about putting scaffolding up and needing to designate some traffic around it while that's happening.
Yes.
And if there's a way we could serve you to help that.
Through you, Your Worship, I guess that would be to approve the report, the recommendation in the report.
Okay.
Councillor Body.
Thank you. There is a related report. It is at 12B11. I'm wondering if we can bring it forward now with everyone's consent.
Sure.
And I'd make the recommendation, move the recommendation that council supports the continuing development of the Thomson Art Gallery You're It off-site projects with this project, and we waive any occupation fee, permit fee, the recommendation.
Okay. And further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried. And the You're It project is a go, in full support with this council, and congratulations to all the groups that are involved. Particular attention to the young folks who drive the innovation and bring some great things to this community. So thank you so much for pitching in and getting this job done.
Great. And
Thank
on
you.
behalf of everyone that's involved in the project, thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. And another important community update, another important community group that's doing some great work in the community. Richard Thomas is here to provide update on a new group, the Community Waterfront Center Committee.
Right, thank
Welcome.
you very much. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm glad you're all in a good mood tonight. I can tell by the way things went here at the start, so we'll just try and keep that going. The last time I was here, I did promise to keep you up to date with monthly reports on the activities of the group that organized to save the Owen Sound Marine and Rail Museum. We held our first meeting July 2nd, where an executive was elected from the 19 people in attendance, which was pretty good seeing as I invited 12. Jeff Robbins and myself were named co-chairs of the group. Other executive members include Doris Fraser, Peter Lemon, Ron O'Donoghue, Linda Droyne, Marianne Thomas, Linda Scarrow, and Wayne King. And some folks are here with me tonight. The first order of business was a name for our group, something we require, of course, for incorporation. We had been asked by the Owen Sound Museums and agreed not to call ourselves the Friends of the Marine and Rail Museum, and we decided after quite some debate to call ourselves the Community Waterfront Center. Now, it's important for everyone to know that this is simply the name of what we hope will become the Board of Management for the historic CN station. There has been no discussion on changing the name of the museum, which remains the Owen Sound Marine and Rail Museum. And quite a few people have commented once we started calling ourselves the Community Waterfront Center. Of course, the name isn't the only thing we've been busy with. That's one of the smaller items, actually. Much of the summer has been spent dealing with the nuts and bolts of becoming a real organization. Our present plan is to incorporate under the umbrella of the Ontario Historical Society, and a subcommittee has been working on getting that going. We're hopeful that by late September that we'll have the incorporation through that group. I'd like to take just a moment to clear up some confusion around what's presently happening at the museum. I've been contacted by quite a few concerned members of the community who have received phone calls to come and pick up items from the museum. And therefore, they are concerned that the present board is continuing to close out the museum in spite of what our group is doing. That's not the case. What they're doing right now is they are returning items that have been on loan to the museum. And this is something that they have to do. And in fact, the ministry people have told me it's a good thing for us if all that's looked after before we get involved. The permanent collection of the Marine and Rail Museum, that which is owned by the museum board, remains intact. And we have that board's word that everything will stay as it is as we move forward. For people who have been asked to pick up their items, I would encourage you all to keep them close at hand, as there may be need for them again. We've been in contact with the chair of the Owen Sound Museums, who has provided us with a letter detailing some of the things that we'll have to have in place before the board can turn any artifacts over to our group. My co-chair and I will be meeting with Dr. Totten later this week, and the Community Waterfront Center will appear as a delegation at the September board meeting of the Owen Sound Museums to open up discussions. We hope to have a website up within the next couple of weeks, and the address will be oscwc.ca. Not only will you be able to make a donation there, but if you have an idea that you think we should consider as we work on our business plan, you can also email it to us through that site. Speaking of donations, I'd like to end tonight's presentation by announcing that the Owen Sound Transportation Company has made a $5,000 donation to the Community Waterfront Centre. That money will be used to start the Community Waterfront Centre Endowment Fund with Community Foundation Grey Bruce. Once the paperwork is completed, early next week, we'll be in a position to accept donations and issue tax receipts. And just to keep you all right up to date, I've been told by our financial people today that pledges and donations to the Community Waterfront Centre are presently a little bit north of $20,000. So we are well on our way to creating some new possibilities for the historic CN Station and the Marine and Rail Museum. So I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you so much for bringing that, your first of many, I hope, updates on the situation. And as we move forward, I'm so pleased to hear personally that yourselves and the current board of directors are getting together to meet to work out how to move forward.
Yes, and thank you for your help.
My pleasure. We have so many people in this community that are so passionate about the history of this community, and it's valuable to all of us. And that is the underlying common denominator in this entire initiative. So I congratulate all the people who have spent so much time and so many hours on bringing this forward. So thank you. Any member of council? Councillor Twaddle.
Thanks. Richard, I just want to make a very brief comment. I am pleased and impressed but not surprised at the professionalism of the approach that you've taken to this point, and I want to thank you for that leadership.
Thank you.
Any other members of Councillor Body?
Sorry, I missed the website. You went pretty quickly with that. If you could sort of slow it down for...
It's a lot of letters.
I'd be happy to. It's oscwc.ca.
So that's what, Owen Sound...
Community Waterfront Centre.
Community Waterfront Centre.ca.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Any questions or comments? Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to your next update.
All right.
Thank you. And now we'll ask Mr. John Howard if he could just give us an update, our manager of parks and open spaces. And this is something that, well, we all had hoped it would not rear its ugly head in Owen Sound, seems to have. So we'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council for inviting me here this evening to bring you this update.
Mr. Howard, I'll just ask you to push the button on your microphone.
Sorry.
Thank you. There we go. As we go through this discussion, what has always amazed me is the tiny size of this particular creature, which is destroying our ash trees. It's quite remarkable how tiny it is.
Yes, and actually, thank you for the reminder. I brought one with me. It's dead.
I bet it's dead and encased in some kind of plexiglass.
That's both the adult and the larva, and you have some handouts, which unfortunately the photos, of course, are all blown up to show them better. This sign appeared in the entrance to Harrison Park in about 2007, and some people were a little concerned that they thought we were trying to get a monopoly on our firewood sales. But it was actually, as the sign says, to protect our forest. As we go through I go through this information, you'll find that most of the spread of the emerald ash borer, I think the latest statistic I heard is about 95% of the spread is can be directly related to the movement of firewood or wood that's infested with the insect. So that's why that sign is there. Unfortunately, not all campgrounds across the province have taken that approach, and despite the fact that all kinds of information was given out
on not moving firewood. And our campground staff, basically with every registration, we send out information either by mail or email advising of the reason that we don't want outside firewood. This is a close-up of the pests that I've sent around. Obviously a magnification.
I hope so.
I mention that because you could make a horror story or horror movie, I think, out of this story. It's considered to be one of the worst invasive species into North America, and there are suggestions that it is many, many times worse than the Dutch elm disease, which came through in the 50s and 60s. The emerald ash borer has estimated to kill 25 to 30 million ash trees since it first was detected in Michigan in 2002, and a billion more trees in Canada and the US are at risk of infestation and death. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has given this the status of a pest of quarantine significance. So why do we worry about the emerald ash borer? One of the main reasons is the insect is not native to North America. It's an exotic. And with that, when you have exotics come in, they do not have any predators. So there aren't any natural controls or effective natural controls. It seems to like our climate. It comes from China and areas of Korea that have similar weather to ours. When it first was here, people didn't think it would come to Owen Sound because they thought it was too cold. And obviously it's on our doorstep. It has been easily transported to new areas, as I said, with firewood and other materials. And North American trees are showing very little natural resistance. As I said, there's estimated about 30 million dead ash trees in the US and Ontario. I was at a session last week in Toronto, the International Society of Arboriculture, and one of the speakers there said they thought it was closer to 50. There's an estimated 2 billion ash trees at risk in Canada, according to statistics. And it affects all North American species of ash, the white ash, the green ash, and the black ash, all of which grow in this area. But not mountain ash. Just a little botanical information. Mountain ash is not an ash. It actually is a member of the rose family. So apparently we can blame that on the Europeans, that when they came here they thought it was an ash tree because it has the compound leaf. So we don't have to worry. And I've had numerous calls from people concerned about their mountain ash across the city. So why concern? Obviously, environmentally, it's an early succession hardwood, the Phryxina species. It's very common in southern Ontario and eastern Ontario woodlots. You just have to look around Owen Sound on the escarpment and through Harrison Park and our parklands to see that it's a prevalent species. We'll see increased erosion and degradation of aquatic habitats. That's already occurred down in southwestern Ontario, where it first came across in Essex County and the Windsor and Sarnia areas. We'll have loss of habitat for birds and invertebrates and vertebrate animals. A loss of biodiversity. It'll affect the carbon sequestering with the sheer volume of trees that we're going to lose. There'll be a degradation of air and water quality. Now, they also say there's several species at risk, which are rare, the pumpkin and blue ash. But funnily enough, again at the session I was at last week in Toronto, the International Society of Arboriculture, blue ash may be some of our salvation because it is actually not as palatable to the emerald ash borer. So they're looking at ways that they might be able to breed hybrids with the blue ash. Just some photos. This is a woodlot in the Kennard River in Essex County, taken in 2003. And then a year later, basically the devastation. It happens very quickly. Looking at these photos, a suggestion that the emerald ash borer was probably in those woodlots up to 5 years before there was any indication of the type of devastation that was going to occur. Another aerial view, basically showing the predominance of ash in that woodlot, and those trees that are still green are probably maples or other varieties of trees. Now, a little science lesson on the life cycle of the emerald ash borer. The eggs are laid under the bark of the ash tree in the late spring, early to midsummer. The eggs hatch within a few weeks, and the very small larvae bore through under the bark, and they start to feed in the cambium. And they go through 4 molts or instars prior to pupating and developing into an adult beetle. The overwintering stage is either as an immature larva or a pre-pupa larva state. Pupation occurs in the spring, and adults start to emerge around the 3rd week of May, with peak emergence occurring in mid to late June. There is some evidence that in colder areas or areas of lower infestation, where the trees are better able to resist attacks, the larvae may require 2 seasons to complete their life cycle. In Canada and the United States, adults are rarely observed after the middle of August. I have a piece of wood that I got from a workshop a couple of years ago. It is a little heavy. I don't know if you just want to look at it afterwards. But it does show you the galleries and also the characteristic capital D-shaped holes that you'll see in a ash tree that's been infested. That was steamed, by the way, to make sure that I wasn't bringing any of the beasties to Owen Sound. And just to give you an example, there's a dime, and it shows you the pupal chamber with overwintering pre-pupal larvae. And then the adult and the larva, as you've seen in that little vial that I passed around. Signs and symptoms. Unfortunately, this is what we're going to see. This is in London, Ontario, dead and dying ash. Just in a very cursory inventory, Owen Sound wasn't caught up as much as other municipalities in almost monoculture. This subdivision is very obviously very highly populated with ash. Our ash, there are a lot of ash in Owen Sound, but as far as street trees are concerned, we have a good variation, number of varieties of trees. This is characteristic. The emerald ash borer, by the way, is not picky on the size of tree. It will take trees or saplings down to the size of your little finger up to fully grown trees. And characteristic of it is cracks in the bark. And these cracks are caused by the tree trying to heal itself with the galleries that the insect carves. As the cambium tries to heal, it causes the bark to crack. Now this can be misleading because on some trees and ash, younger ash may crack from frost cracking as well. But it's worth an investigation to look in underneath the cracks. And as said, there's the D-shaped emergence hole. And a indication of the serpentine galleries. They basically go back and forth, eventually go all the way around the tree, and it's just the same as girdling the tree. Trees can take a number of years to die because, of course, they can draw materials from that are stored in the heartwood and basically retain their foliage, which is a little misleading. And then they have what they call epicormic or adventitious shoots, which will appear on the trunk. And again, it's the tree's survival mechanism. It's trying to reproduce itself and put on new growth. And this is an indicator of damage underneath the bark, and the tree is trying to save itself. This is an example of the feeding by the adult. It does do some damage to the leaves, but that wouldn't in any way really affect the overall health of the tree. It's the larva that is the damaging stage. This is an example, and sorry, if you just see that little red space, in 2002, this was sort of ground zero for the initial infestations. It basically just come across and noticed in Windsor. And again, in Windsor, they finally found out that they'd actually had it for about 5 years before they knew what they were dealing with. Slowing the spread of the EAB, we can't eradicate it. We're basically just trying up to this stage to slow it. I was told a number of years ago by a representative from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that it wasn't a case of if, it was a case of when it would be in our area. And as I said, it's basically been given a very much significance by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Canada has an obligation under international plant protection. The ironic thing is that a lot of our ash wood and other wood products are now being, we can't export them to the Orient because they don't want the emerald ash board yet. They've already got it, and that's where it came from. I thought it was ironic, too, that those fridge magnets are made in China. We're here giving them business back, at least the Canadian Food Inspection Agency was.
These are provided by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, just to be clear. That's the federal government.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
So if we do nothing, we'll continue to spread with widespread economic and environmental impact. In 2009, this was the map that was drawn out. It said in 25 years, this is going to be the effect. We're very close to this already, within 5 years. It is spread that much, basically surrounding the Great Lakes. It's come across from Michigan at Sault Ste. Marie. As I said, it could take up to 4 or 5 years or longer before you'll see the signs, and in the time it will spread and infest all the ash trees. They're saying the leading edge of the infestation is often 20 to 25 kilometers beyond where the EAB was detected. It's been detected in Meaford. If you follow this, then it's probably here. We just haven't been able to find it, and we have been looking. And as I said, it's human activities that are responsible for the spread. Now, just quickly through, because this is changing, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency was responsible for this control because it's the only federal agency that has the right to quarantine, and because we do export ash products, that's why they've been involved. In areas where it was first noticed, down in Essex County, they basically thought they could quarantine it there. I've mentioned in past presentations, there was a 5-kilometer wide fire break that was, they took out all the ash from Point Pelee to Lake St. Clair, and because they were told that it couldn't fly more than 2 or 3 kilometers. They didn't take into consideration people taking firewood across those breaks. The City of Windsor did nothing to protect the wood that they cut down. It was in areas, and they were letting people take it away, where they really should have locked the gates on those compounds. So there are 2 notices that were used, a notice of prohibition of movement and a notice of quarantine. And basically, this is the map as it stands now. You'll see a red dot, that's Meaford. Where it's been detected. There's 2 other red dots over in the Kawartha Lakes and then down towards the Cobourg area. As I said, it's in Quebec. Right now, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is looking at trying to control its further travel into other areas in Ontario. So the pest control products that they've been using are often limited or in effectiveness. They are limited to protection of urban trees. It's not like gypsy moth or the tent caterpillar where they could do aerial sprayings. When you've got a borer that's in under the bark, that's not really effective. Tree removal has not been recommended for control, but again, in the session I was at last week, they're starting to change their attitude on that, and I'll speak to that in a minute. We It's suggested, obviously, to remove infested trees will reduce the risk of some of the EAB spreading, but in a lot of cases, as I said, it's hard to detect it. They're saying that dollars would be better spent on communication outreach and regulatory activities. Those regulatory activities to date have not been very effective. So biological control options, I think this has got a lot of promise, and again, from the information I picked up last week. Parasitoids, being an exotic, we didn't think there was anything that would attack it, but they've actually found there are wasps that will attack the larva, predators, even a fungi with some larvae such as the grubs that we get in our lawn. It's actually a fungus that we can apply that will control them, and they're looking at those type of things for the larvae here, or a bacteria. And again, just recently, woodpeckers are, I guess when you get an insect that comes from the Orient, it's something like sushi, you know, you don't know whether you really like it, but they're finding that woodpeckers are starting to go after them, so we can hope that, and there's others that they are working on in terms of research. As I said, there's little resistance in the ash species. The only long-term hope is for management. The emergence of resistant trees, as mentioned about the blue ash and developing hybrids. I did see a slide last week from, I believe it was Cleveland, where they had a street similar to that one I just showed you, where all of the trees were dead except for one, and they said that was an ash tree. And it was the same variety of ash, but they can't understand why they didn't find any emerald ash borer, the rest of the street and that one tree. So obviously they're in there taking cuttings and they're trying to find out what that tree has that maybe is not palatable to the emerald ash borer. There's 3 species of non-native parasitoids were released in by the USDA in 2007, and additional 3 other species found in the wild in Canada that are showing promise. Now, why biocontrol agents? Biological control is a long-term strategy. It's accepted throughout the world for sustained control of invasive species. It's an approach used for non-native species that, number 1, have been established for more than 5 years, and 2, cannot be eradicated, and 3, cause significant ecological or economic damage. Obviously, biological control involves research in the N6 country, and actually there have been scientists from both the US and Canada that have gone to China and looked, because they've had the emerald ash borer there for years and they still have ash, and they're looking at identifying natural predators there. Obviously, there's a concern that you don't want to bring another problem over, but it's being looked at very carefully. So they're looking at those, they're studying that. The high prevalence of these parasitoids tends to occur in stands where the majority of the trees are already dying or dead. And of course, with any biological, you're going to have the population of the emerald ash borers high until the predator's population comes up, and then they won't have anything to feed on, and so there'll be these peaks and valleys. But we're hoping those peaks and valleys are going to allow some time to develop those other ash, or that the ash will develop a resistance. The work with fungi is not being very successful. Only about 1% of the sample trees in Michigan State showed any promise. Interestingly, most of the fungi were isolated from a single field site, and the fungal attack resulted in about 62% mortality of the AB larvae, pupa, and emerging adults. So if we can find develop these fungi that will go after it. This is what you're going to see. You've heard of triazin. It's a product that is showing promise, that's being injected into the tree so they can get right into the xylem and phloem of the tree, the cambium layer. This particular product was developed by the Canadian Forest Service in collaboration with a company called Bioforest Technologies. and it's produced in Canada from neem tree seed extracts. It's not neem oil, as it's been mentioned. There are local applicators, Lands and Forests. You probably heard their ads on the media. Lands and Forest Consulting, that's the company that we use to go do the burn at Kelso for the Phragmites. And so they're into invasive species control in a big way. Now the treatment cost is dependent on the diameter of the trees to be treated, and that just gives you an idea. It's $5.75 per centimeter of diameter measured at what they call chest height, 4.5 feet above the ground. Landowners can calculate an accurate diameter in centimeters by measuring the circumference at chest height and multiplying it by a conversion factor of 0.81. Now, the problem with this type of insect is that when the trees die, they are very, very dry because all of the juices have been sucked out of them, and they become a hazard almost immediately. They're very brittle, and I understand there's been a number of lawsuits down in the Essex County area where trees on private property have fallen on neighbors' houses because they have left them for a prolonged period of time. I'll just go through this quickly because this basically is to do with the changes in the, mainly to do with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Despite the aggressive eradication efforts, the regulatory approach wasn't working and it requires amendment. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency basically is saying that the insect is here now, it's beyond quarantine except in other areas of Canada, and obviously for budget reasons they're being asked to put their resources into to other areas, unregulated areas of Ontario and Quebec. I was at a session in February at Nottawasaga Inn, and there was the two proposals were given, and there was another one by the stakeholders which proposed a third option, and that third option is that despite the fact that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is a federal agency, there needs to be funding from both the provincial and federal levels to help municipalities with this problem. I think we got out of the gate a little too slow, and it's just taken off. So we have to look at the future distribution of the pest and draw our plans from that. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency has said that they have to pull back their resources by April of next year, and they're basically moving from an emergency response to a pest management approach, basically to protect infested areas. So from a municipal action plan, we've said we need to be prepared. Our staff are trained to recognize the signs and symptoms. When we have an orientation every spring, they get the information. Number of the staff have come in and thought they've seen the emerald ash borer because there is another beetle. In fact, I think, Pam, you had one at your place that you thought might be the emerald ash borer. There are other beetles that are emerald in color. The big thing with any type of control is that we have to have a tree inventory. And we're looking at a GPS database. We've got a GPS unit that will be able to locate where these ash are. We have to review our operating procedures for collection and disposal of yard materials. That may mean looking at how we operate the compost site and identify potential disposal sites. Briefings such as this to council, obviously, and there are going to be budget pressures, unfortunately, and preparation of response plans and manuals. The number there that I got, I probably should have taken that out because I don't know there's much use contacting the Canadian Food Inspection Agency other than getting the information they've given us. So.
Is that the
Just
sound
in
that
case
they
I didn't
make?
get any applause. And I just thought I'd finish off with, these are two of our treasures in Owen Sound. The one on Fifth Avenue West is probably the largest white ash that I've seen in the area. And then at 726 4th Street East, I had a call from the resident there because it's a huge ash. The photos don't do them justice. They're both about 119 inches in circumference. So you're looking at around $600 if we want to treat those, and they both are city trees. Thank you very much for your attention. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard, and I'm sure there will be some questions. Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, John, and that was, we've had a presentation at County Council from one of the people from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and very similar to what you've told us, and that's fine, and all my questions have been answered by you tonight. But I have one. When you go into Harrison Park and you see the sign, how many people come into the park to camp with their own, bringing in firewood?
More than we would like, but not that many. Unfortunately, the first time this year in May, one of my staff brought me a piece of bark. Now, it was fairly decomposed, so I don't think there was any insects attached to it, but we traced it back. The campers were from Sarnia, and they'd obviously brought their own wood in, and it had the D-shaped holes, capital D-shaped holes in it. Whenever we find people that have brought firewood in, if we see it, we confiscate it. In most cases, just as a token, we will give them a bag of firewood if that's all they've got. A couple of years ago, when we had the maple syrup producers conference here, there was an elderly couple that came in. He said, "Don't worry, it's all maple wood." And the first piece of wood I picked up was ash. It did have a borer in it, but it wasn't the emerald ash borer. And he had a pickup truck full of wood, and that was a little harder to handle. But I think for the most part, the word is getting out to people, but there are a few. And some, they can buy wood at Chatsworth or wherever. We don't know where they brought it from, so we just say any outside firewood. And that's basically the approach that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency told us.
So then I guess the answer is that there needs to be some regulation on people selling firewood.
There should be, yes.
Right.
There's a fellow up just on outside by Inglis Falls Road there that sells it by the the big feed bags. And I know that's, if any of the campers coming in, it's a better price than we have because our bags are smaller. But again, we don't know where that wood came from, whether it's from him or it could be.
But you don't. And on my travel home today, down near Durham, there was a trailer full of wood at the side of the road saying for sale, $225. So you have no idea what kind of wood that's in. So
yeah.
I do agree that there needs to be more education on this sort of thing, or we're going to lose all our ash trees.
Yes, fortunately.
Councillor Burton?
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we, other than these two trees, do we have an idea of how many city ash trees, like large mature trees?
No, that's why we need to do an inventory, and not just an inventory of where they
Yes.
are, but a condition inventory, because we're going to have to make a decision on which ones, because I'm going to suggest that we do some injections to save quality trees like these. There are some ash that maybe are suffering already from construction or whatever, and we may have to say, well, we're going to sacrifice those and basically save the others. But we have to know where they are. The other issue we have, even to this day, is when I go out or one of my staff go out to respond to a tree call, is finding out exactly where the property line is, whether the tree is actually on city property. And in a lot of cases, it's bordering. In most cases, if it's a tree maintenance issue, most municipalities, if the tree's on the boundary line, the municipality takes care of it. But just this morning, I drove across 4th Avenue West, and there's 3 very majestic ash there, not as big as these, but all 3 of those, I'm sure, are on private property. Yes.
And just in your opinion, how long is what is the window in terms of doing the inventory, developing the plan, in terms of the spread of this insect in our community? So are we developing a plan immediately?
Yes. Again, based on the information that I got from the conference last week, Davey Tree is one of the largest and most respected tree care companies in North America. And The person I spoke there, who I happen to know, said that she figured we had about a 2-year window before it was really going to be an issue. I'm not so optimistic. Again, we haven't found it, but if it's in Meaford, I'm pretty sure it's here.
I just wanted to say that we have a cottage up near Perry Sound, and I found an emerald ash borer there.
Did you?
Just the insect, the little insect. So it may be much more widespread that you don't see trees dying yet, but it's all over the place. So I felt that was pretty scary. I couldn't believe it's not here if it's all the way up there. But
yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, well, I wanted to make sure that you got the applause. I thought that presentation was amazing and very helpful. Remember we had a presentation by the Community Foundation around the Eva LaFleur Memorial Tree projects, and I guess I was thinking that if by replacing trees we would be okay, but it sounds like we have a bigger problem than just replacing trees with other ones.
We haven't planted, even though ash is on our list of approved trees, we haven't planted ash since about 2007.
So we would use other trees from that project.
In some cases, you know, like with the elm disease, a lot of people thought, well, we'll just keep planting elms and hopefully the disease will disappear. But with this case, it's, as I said, it attacks any size, so there's no use in doing that. So, and we have a number of ash that are on on 2nd Avenue East as part of the big dig, and we'll have to look at when we replace those, what we're going to replace them with. So.
Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Howard, once a tree is infected, is it done? Is it reversible?
It depends on how much it's infested. If it's very much infested, then it's basically done. The triazine, they're suggesting that that's put on as a bit of a preventative. It will work on trees that are just the beginning stages of infestation, but they're suggesting if there's signs of a larger infestation, then not to waste your money on that.
I'm just wondering, I know the tree inventory is important, and Councillor Purdon talked about a timeline, but by the time you inventory all of the trees, then come back with a plan or a priority of how you're going to, some of the ones that might be too late already for some of those trees. And so I'm wondering if there shouldn't also be a short-term stopgap, if that's the word. I know you're not going to save them all, but if there are, and I'm talking for budget time, if perhaps, I don't know what the number is, but an amount shouldn't be set aside as a stopgap while the plan is being developed.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a suggestion.
The inventory, I would suggest, is we start with street trees. We obviously have got thousands of them in the parks, but I would start, because those are going to be the trees that are a liability to, and basically a health and safety issue. They can be in the park as well, but that's why I'd like to do that inventory first. I know there's companies out there will come in and do a whole inventory for us, but I think that would be the first start.
Just going to go back to Councillor Purdon.
Yeah, just picking up on this conversation, because there's also quite a cost to taking a large tree like those trees there down. Like, I'm sure it would cost, we had one in our backyard and it was $500 to take a big tree down. So it would probably make more sense to look at some early interventions now, because you're going to pay for something later anyway to take a tree down. So is there a way of moving that forward? Do you need council to be providing support to do some early interventions? Would a report come back here?
As I said, it'll basically be putting funding in the budget for that. There is a soft, poor pun, in terms of takedown, and that's why I said we need to do not just an inventory, but an inventory of the condition of the trees, so that we know which ones we should target first for saving. And we could do that fairly quickly with, as I said, I've just done a cursory travel around. And as I said, our biggest problem is making sure that we're putting the investment into trees that are on city property. I did have a call this morning from a resident that thought that they might get a deal by, if the city's doing it, and the city would be getting a better price. But at this point, from anybody I talked to last week, it's the same price. And actually, they're concerned this triazine material, they're not producing it fast enough for the demand. So.
And just moving forward with that, because I think there must be somewhere a budget line for taking trees down. Like if a tree has to be taken down, it has to be taken down, a contingency line, whether one consideration could be moving some of that on a timely basis just to do some work on preservation. But
luckily, we have the staff on our payroll that basically do the takedowns. The ones that are concerned, which actually both these would be, is where there's electrical lines, and that's when we have to have a contractor come in.
Councillor Lemon.
You were talking about biological control, which to me makes sense. And one of the things that's been done with agricultural crops, I don't know if it's been done with trees, is where you cultivate the parasite that's going to take care of them in large quantities in laboratory conditions, and then distribute them very intensely into the area. And that has been done with apples in terms of controlling certain scabs and things. I was wondering if is Ottawa looking at that, or Queen's Park?
I think that should be part of our plan. I put the City of Owen Sound's name in for the parasitic wasps. They were looking for sites where we would basically help breed them. And we were turned down because unfortunately you had to have the emerald ash board for them to feed on before. So it's like nematoids. There's no use if you don't have the problem. Putting nematoids into your lawn to control grubs. If you don't have grubs, then the nematoids just die because they've got nothing to feed on. So.
But there's no point in breeding these for potential infestation?
No, they say you got to wait until you've got them in the area, so they've got something to feed on. So. Yeah,
I seem to remember there used to be some ash trees on the West Rocks area, particularly. And that's some of it's ours, some of it's conservation up there, isn't it?
Yeah.
That could be really awful to see that area bared.
Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. If this was a human infestation, this would qualify as a horror movie. This is quite concerning. I think just listening to Councillor Purdon and Councillor McManaman, the issue is going to be the street trees for us because, as you had said, when these trees die, they have to come down right away. You can't just leave them there. So the question is, do we put the money forward to save the trees, or do we put the money in reserve to cut the dead trees down later? There's still going to be an awful lot of money, I would think, expended over the next little while, which is quite unfortunate. I mean, we need to maintain our urban forest as best we can. I think this is an issue that we are going to need to look at very seriously at budget time, because if we don't put the money in to inoculate the trees, then we'll absolutely, for insurance reasons, have to put the money in the budget in a year or two to take these trees down. So it's probably better to spend the money and try to maintain our urban forest than put money in reserve to chainsaw a bunch of dead trees. This is quite distressing for, I think, a lot of our residents. There is also a report that you have here, and I would move certainly the recommendation that we receive this report, and certainly some of the actions that you were talking about, we do need to move forward on those.
So we have a motion on the floor. That's on page 115 of Council's package. I'm going to go to Ms. Coulter and then Councillor Boddy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wondered if Council wanted to add to the motion that the municipal action plan that Mr. Howard spoke about could be developed more fully through Rec and Parks prior to budget discussions later this fall, and then you'd have a clearer picture on how we would implement those various items that Mr. Howard had identified.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor Body.
I was
Absolutely.
just going to suggest that Councillor Adair make that as a friendly change, just to go ahead and add that, because we should get the report back for budget.
Sure. Sounds like that's an affirmative, friendly amendment. And is there further discussion to this? To the motion, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you so much for this very timely report. And what can a homeowner do? Those that are watching tonight are going to have, either going to look out their backyard and they're going to say, gee, I have an ash tree. What do I do? What would your advice be to them at this time?
I've had a number of them contact me already.
I'm sure. I'm trying to help to channel them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if it is to contact a private tree expert.
Yeah, basically, there's the Lands and Forests Consultants, and I understand that there is a organization that is between the Saugeen Conservation Authority and the Great Sabo Conservation Authority. They put a group together that are actually doing these injections as well, and they'll actually come around and assess the tree. Other than that, there aren't very many of the tree companies that are really set up to do the inspections, other than follow the information that I've
These are two public agencies that have come together to, perhaps there would be an opportunity to post that information on the city website in terms of a contact. To,
both of those agencies are advertising. I've heard they're advertising on the radio, but it would be worthwhile to have it on the website as well. So.
Thank you so much. Councillor Chamberlain.
Through you, I just wondered if it would be possible to bring 12B10 forward. Matt Cool from the watering project is here, and would that be possible or not?
Did we vote, just one moment?
I'm sorry,
Did we vote on that last motion?
No.
We're doing it. Okay, let's vote on that motion first. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. And unless there's any disagreement from council members, I don't have any issues with bringing 12B10 forward. That's a report from our engineering technologist. This is with regards to the community gardens and the Canadian Mental Health Association. And it was the issue around access to water for those gardens, and there's been a solution found. Councillor Adair.
Well, I would move the recommendation, Your Worship, that we supply the water, but exempt the sewer surcharge, because of course this water won't be going into city sewers, it'll be going into the water, into the bedding.
Thank you. Thank you to all involved for coming up with this most workable solution. Further comments? Councillor Chamberlain?
Well, I just wonder if we could ask Matt if he understands clearly what his expenses are going to be, because when we were reading the report, we were a little bit confused about that. So would you like to ask? Would that be all right?
Sure.
I had a chance to speak with Dana Goetz about the cost of it, and he estimated the cost at $2,000 to $3,000 for the installation of the terminal. So we haven't investigated that yet, because we're waiting to get approval, of course. So once this recommendation is approved, we will begin to investigate that. But we're happy to bear the cost of installation. I did speak with Ms. Coulter just before the meeting began here, and she mentioned that because there is a note on the second page, I believe, that the Parks Department would have access to the terminal. And she said that the Parks Department, the city would compensate the CMHA for any water that they use on that meter, of course. So I just wondered if that could also just be entered in writing, just to be as explicit as possible with the agreement that going forward here.
I'm going to thank you for those comments, and I'll go to the mover of the motion.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. It's an important detail. Thank you.
Whoever's using the water pays for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a fair process. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Chamberlain, for bringing that forward.
Yeah, thanks for expediting that.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Look forward to a great harvest this fall. We do not have any members of the public here that are ready to ask a question, and I will move on to correspondence. We have an update from the YMCA of Owen Sound Grey Bruce with regards to an update on donations to the Regional Rec Centre. Motion to receive, Councillor McManaman. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a quite a short consent agenda this evening. Items 12A1 through 8. It's Council's direction. Councillor Purdon.
I would move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We have a series of reports, three of which we've dealt with. 12B1 is a report from the Manager of Accounting. This is with regards to the dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation. Councillor Adair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move the recommendation that we enter into an agreement to receive the gas tax.
Okay. Discussion, Councillor Purdon.
I had just a question about why it's less this year. My understanding was it was based on population, and if there could be an explanation for that.
I will defer that to our Acting Director of Financial Services, and recognizing that Ms. Allen is the acting director, and if that information isn't readily available, we can certainly bring that back.
Through your worship, sorry, I believe the funds are allocated based on total amounts brought in, and therefore it's slightly under what we expected.
Revenues that we bring in?
Revenues brought in by the province.
Thank you, Councillor Body.
Thank you. And 100% of this goes to transit.
Exactly.
So a reduction of in the amount that from what we expected actually brings up the tax feeding of it up to like 65% from about 63 or 64%. Probably don't know. I just note that doing the calculation that it puts more pressure on the tax base to fund it than what we were talking about 6 weeks ago.
Certainly has an impact. Is there further discussion on this? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from, again, the Manager of Accounting with regards to 2013 debentures. You'll find this on page 86 to page 90. It's Council's direction on this item. Councillor Twaddle.
I have a
Sure.
So I have a question. Most of the debentures are at 5%, but the debenture that we're giving ourselves from our landfill reserve is at 2.5%. And I'm just wondering why that is. And I noticed that it's a 15-year debenture, which means that, now does this mean that we won't see any net revenue from these solar installations for 15 years going into general operating? At one point I understood it was like a 10-year expense and then 10 years of revenue. Now it's a 15-year expense and 5 years of revenue. Is that correct, or am I not following that?
Through your worship, the debenture was designed taking into account the revenues earned on an annual basis and the overall term of the contract that we have with the microfit contract. 2.5% over 15 years is payment slightly under our annual revenue. Any shorter than that, the interest rate would have to be barely zero in order to pay it back in a shorter period of time. And we didn't want to extend it too long until we know for sure what the lifespan of the solar panels actually will be.
So basically what's happening is the revenue is not meeting the expectations we had when these went forward. I mean, I understood it was about 10 years to pay it off, and then there would be 10 years of revenue.
My understanding is that revenues are consistent with expectation over what is planned to be a 20-year period for the contract. At this rate, the loan will be paid off in 15 years. The last 5 years, therefore, will be profit to the city.
Okay, that's my understanding. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion on this item? Do we have a mover? We need a mover. Moved by Councillor Wright. Everybody clear? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a report from Manager of Accounting with regards to Municipal Infrastructure Program, a consultation. You'll find this on page 91 to 102. It's Council's direction on this. This is speaking to the $100 million infrastructure fund specific to small and rural communities. Councillor Purdon.
I'll move the recommendation, which we approve the submission of the new Municipal Infrastructure Program consultation workbook, but perhaps we should hear what you're recommending.
I will defer again to our acting Director of Financial Services, who is in the seat tonight. And this is in response to and as a result of a consultation process that occurred a number of weeks ago in Goderich, Ontario. The Minister of Infrastructure invited us to attend, and there was a lengthy discussion with politicians and senior municipal bureaucrats from across this part of Ontario. It's part of 10 consultations, and we were able to participate in that. And now I'll turn it to Ms. Allen.
Thank you, Your Worship. The consultation, the province is really looking for direction from the involved municipalities as to what the format of the program should take, both this year and into the future. As they've said, the $100 million is for this year and may or may not become a permanent program going into the 2014 budget. So the big question was, should this program be based on entitlement or merit? A merit-based program would involve an application process and a selection of projects, whereas entitlement-based, similar to gas tax funding or other permanent programs, is based on a consistent measure across all municipalities. So their question was, what would be our preference, I suppose, and what would we support? In our consultation, we responded looking at the funds in two different ways. Since 2013 is known and guaranteed, we would like to see that as a merit-based process where there is an application process involved. And should the program become a permanent program in 2014 and forward, have an entitlement program so that council has an opportunity to plan ahead of time and know that those funds are in place.
Councillor Purdon?
Thank you for that explanation. I think that's very, very important. And I thought it was really important in the report as well that the entitlement program, that we actually advocate that it's not based solely on our population, because communities like ours always lose out with that approach. So I really hope that we as a council will also move that forward.
Thank you. I have to tell council that I can report that particular message was very clearly articulated, not only by myself representing Owen Sound, but also mayors from across this region that attended the consultation. So that was very clearly delivered. Further discussion on this particular item. Councillor Twaddle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Ms. Allen, I thought that the report was, or the workbook was very well presented, that without laboring the arguments, the points were well made, and I think they're important, so I hope they're heard. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Purdon. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a report from purchasing agent with regards to supply, delivery, installation, and training of asset management planning software. What's council's direction on this? Councillor Body.
Could I ask for a quick, no, maybe not. Can you give us a quick little report on sort of what it is and what it'll be used for?
Through your worship, I certainly can. This software will be used to maintain all of the city's tangible capital assets consistent with PSAB 3150. This section came into effect in 2008. However, the City of Owen Sound has not since then invested in any software designed specifically for tracking those costs. It's been a very manual process for finance up until this point. In addition, there is a module that will use that historical cost data as well as integrate the condition assessment information that we're currently obtaining through a consultant and use that data to create risk-assessed profiles for our assets and do future capital planning based on those risk assessments.
Councillor Body?
I'll move that. So it's a computer program that helps us plan our financing for capital expenditures and things to be stronger in the
Exactly,
future.
and using condition assessment data to support which projects should be prioritized.
Perfect, thank you. So I'll move that.
Absolutely. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have a request from, again, the purchasing agent, and this is for a 1-ton dump truck for parks and open spaces. Councillor Purdon.
Move that we purchase a 1-ton dump truck. Sounds like something I'd like to have in my sandbox.
Any discussion? Councillor Body.
Hey, thank you, Your Worship. I just note this is a 2000 Dodge truck that we're replacing that was supposed to have been replaced in 2010. And as I was reading the report, I was wondering if we could squeeze another year out of it, but we've squeezed 3 extra years out of it already. And a 13-year-old truck has been well used, and we probably can't squeeze another year out of it from reading the report.
I have to say that certainly running a service vehicle like this for 13 years is quite a feat. I won't make any comment on the brand of the truck, that's for sure. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There are electric dump trucks that are being launched by a reputable and well-known car manufacturer that are coming online in 2014. It may in fact be something that that the city could be looking at as we move forward in terms of in-town service vehicles. We have dealt with item 12B6. We have a tall ship update number 10, and that's going to be Ms. Coulter. I expect that the staff directly responsible for this are probably busy getting ready.
You're right. Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly, we're drawing very close to the time for the Tall Ships celebration. Lots is happening. Tickets are going very well. If you would like a ticket, now is the time to buy that. There is an update before you. I think most importantly, Council had raised the question about the closure of First Avenue West and the signage, and you have in your packages tonight the extensive signage that will be around the city, not only with respect to the street closure. The street will be closed as per Book 7 of the Highway Traffic Act, even with additional signage above and beyond that. You have the map showing the parking and shuttle bus locations. The media advisory went out today. I know there's a great article in tomorrow's Sun-Times on the Tall Ships event. So certainly if you're looking for parking, park at the Bayshore, park at Foodland. There's 20 shuttles every 20 minutes to the event. Or if you're close enough and able, certainly walk or ride a bike down there. Certainly tickets still available for the Captain's VIP Welcome Dinner. That would be a great opportunity to get to meet some of the VIPs involved with the event. There's also a request there that the signage that's outlined in the report be permitted between Thursday, August 15th and Monday, August 19th in the locations identified. So certainly the excitement's building, and we're looking forward to a tremendous weekend in partnership with Summerfolk.
Thank you. Councillor Boddy? No, I had you, Councillor
Just a
Boddy
quick
first.
question on the shuttle bus. Do you know the hours, how early, how late? I'm thinking about Summerfolk patrons, because the parking down around that area is going to be pretty limited.
The buses run Friday and Saturday from 8:30 a.m. till 7 p.m. and they run every 20 minutes.
Councillor Lemon?
Yeah, I just have one question. When I was reading all the material on the tall ships, one of the things that it talked about is the access to food with the Kiwanis Club. And it was sort of, the way I read it, it sounded like that was exclusive, but we have a contract with Grilled in Action to allow them into the parking lot at the Visitor Information Center, and I got a copy of it just to see if there was anything excluding during the tall ships. So Grilled in Action could be in the parking lot, the north parking lot, I believe.
Staff were aware of that contract and have been in discussion, and I think Grilled in Action have another event this weekend and won't be on site.
But should they choose, they still would be able to go there.
I'd have to confirm that for council. I could do that by email following tonight.
If you would, please, because in looking at the lease that we passed, it does say from time to time that it's their discretion that they can be there. And so I just don't want us to be in breach of our contract.
Further discussion. Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wonder if I could, through you, to ask Director Pam. I know that the ships are leaving at 2 o'clock on Sunday, but do you have any idea when they're coming in?
They will be in the harbor in Owen Sound beginning Wednesday and Thursday, but there's an official event, I think it's Friday, beginning at 11 a.m. And there'll be more information this week in the paper, and I think each of you in your mailboxes have a detailed package of where to be and when to be there. But check the website, but I think it's Friday at 11.
Councillor Chamberlain?
I'd just like to compliment on all the signage. I think that will be really well done. And also in the downtown, there are several businesses that have decorated their windows, and lots of signage all through the downtown. So I do think we are going to be able to do a great hosting event, and that most people will find their way where they want to be. And there's a very good, on the website for the tall ships, they have a frequently asked questions site, and people have been posting the questions and the answers all over our social media in the last couple of days. So they said also listen to the radio, because you may hear when there's a ship about to come into the harbor on, they were talking about Thursday on that day. So, thank you.
Councillor Lemon?
Yes, when I looked at the map where the signage is going and the information you gave us rather than the map, it looked very complete. But one thing, the Brook bus runs normally down First Avenue West. Do we know what route it's going to take? I didn't see anything in there, or I missed it.
The shuttle bus will run up 10th and down First Avenue West to 14th Street. The shuttle bus?
No,
Or the regular
the
bus?
regular city transit bus. The Brook Run comes across the 10th Street Bridge, normally runs down First Avenue.
I
to
presume it would
14th.
take the detour on Second, but, and it will be well signed. There's a number of signs for that, so, yes. Just if I could, Your Worship, checking the website here, the opening ceremonies are Friday at 11.
Thank you. Councillor Purdon?
Do we have anyone who's moved the motion yet? Because I will if there isn't. Move the motion.
Everybody clear on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We will look forward to seeing everybody down at the Harborfront this weekend. We have a report from the facilities booking coordinator with regards to a municipal significant designation for the annual Fall Classic provincial qualifying slow pitch tournament in September. It's Councillor Lemon.
I would be very pleased to move the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have a report, Director of Operations. This is a bit of a housekeeping item. Canadian Armed Forces use of the Owen Sound Billy Bishop Regional Airport for their training purposes. Councillor McManaman.
I'll move the recommendation, Your Worship, to allow them to have their training there from August 19th to the 24th.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. That was moved by Councillor McManaman. Thank you. We have a motion for 12B10 and 11 we have dealt with earlier. Items, minutes of boards and committees for approval. We have 4 sets. In council direction. Councillor Purdon.
I'd move acceptance of the minutes from the Community Planning and Heritage, Economic Development, Operations, I think that was there another one? And Recreation Parks.
Yep. Discussion on any of those minutes? Councillor Lemon.
One question, Your Worship, if I may. I believe we passed a motion some time ago to eliminate the consideration of properties outside the city which had no effect on the city. And it was sent back to that committee, or community planning. Has anything happened with that?
Through you, Your Worship, we are working on a report through CPAC to identify the criteria for those notices from our neighboring municipalities. It hasn't yet gone to the committee.
When do you anticipate that will happen?
The report's drafted, hopefully the meeting in September or October. Unfortunately, we're one short in terms of staff in that department right now, and we're working and making development a priority and preparing for various hearings. So we are working on that.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't forgotten.
That's fair to keep it on the radar, Councillor Lemon, certainly. And I know staff has a pretty, as we all know, they have a pretty heavy schedule right now. So, further discussion? Anybody move that? Councillor Purdon, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. We have 2 sets of in-camera council meetings for approval. Council direction? Councillor Twaddle, motion to approve. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We have other business. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first thing I want to do is, I'm sure Councillor McManaman will agree with me because I know he was up there pretty near all week too, but the under 21 Canadian softball tournament was held up at Duncan McClellan Park last week, and I just want to say that it was very well organized. I don't want to start naming names, but I know Vani was in charge, and she and her volunteers did just a superb job of organizing that the whole week. And congratulations to the KD team for their sponsoring it, and everything went off really, really well. So it was great for the economy in the city, and there were many, many people there from all across Canada, and it was just a great thing. So the other thing I wanted to say is we're all very much aware of what's going on. We're all getting the emails, we're all getting telephone calls from lots of people that live out in Sydenham. And I am just, I'm going to suggest that maybe we as a council sit down and have a discussion on this, what we would like to do about it. Are we going to welcome these people into our community? Do we want to get involved in anything right now? I know that 12 years ago when amalgamation took place. The provincial government promised that they would re-look at it in 10 years. That has not happened. Do we want to open this up? Do we want to go to the ministry and ask them to take a look at Grey County, or just how do we want to deal with it? Personally, I would open the door and say we would love to have you come to Owen Sound. The cost of us doing business out there is very minimum. We don't have a lot of expense other than roads and garbage, and I don't want to step on any other municipal's toes, but they're visiting Chatsworth, and I think maybe it would be worth us having a look at Sydenham.
Okay, that's a motion.
Make that a motion, that we as council have a sit down and discuss where do we want to go with Sydenham.
Councillor Lemon.
Well, I think Sydenham and Owen Sound is what I would call a natural fit. And considering Owen Sound was originally part of Sydenham Township way back when, and that was our name for many years, Sydenham, I think it's very, very important. And what I see are a lot of economic advantages to everyone by Owen Sound and Sydenham getting together. As an example, in the case of fire, our fire department is closer to Sydenham Township than the inter-township is. And that certainly enters into the equation. I think there are a lot of things that we should be discussing it, because to me, it's a natural fit and would work to the advantage of both the residents of Sydenham and to the residents of Owen Sound. And it would be one of what Councillor Gary Levine used to say, a win-win situation. And I've had calls and emails from people, and they say, will Owen Sound talk to us? And I think that discussion should go forth at our next council meeting in order to let them know if we are interested as a council, because it is a council decision. But I get the sense that the economies of this work in everyone's advantage. And I did ask the treasurer about having to do some of the things that are being done, would have to be done, and he said some of the costs would be minimal.
I'm going to go back to the mover of the motion quickly. Did you want this? The only way the only way you can do anything about the discussion at this point is that you either call the question or we allow council.
Call the question, please. I don't want a discussion on what we want to do here tonight. I want us to get together and have a discussion. So I'll ask for the question to be called.
Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Twaddle is opposed. That motion is carried. Councillor Wright, did you have another item?
No, I had two, and that's two.
Okay. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wonder if staff could get some direction on what information you're going to require, because we'll have to have it by Friday of this week, pretty much.
I'm not sure it's a staff issue. I think it's more of a political issue than it is of a staff issue.
Okay.
I don't, with due respect, I don't mean to shut you out, but I just think it's a political thing right now.
No, I'm happy to be shut out, but
Okay. We're moving on to future items of other business. I believe, Councillor Chamberlain, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to compliment the Fire and Emergency Services of Owen Sound. They got a grant to do the, to actually assist us with our fire prevention activities. It was from the FM Global. It's a large commercial insurance company, and that was just sent out today, but I just wanted to make sure that people know about that one. But the other thing I wanted to compliment was just the amazing amount of volunteer activity that was going on in our community on the weekend. I know you're going to speak to some of this. It was so neat that there were so many things on at the same time. I had guests from out of town, and they also had guests themselves, and there was a lot for people to do. And our streets were alive. It was a very successful. So to all the volunteers and all the organizers of those events like Busker Fest and Mudtown Festival, it was, and the many other things, the ball games, I really think we all, and we're looking forward to this week as well.
That's all? That's all? Okay. All right. I would like to certainly extend the city's appreciation and anticipation of the upcoming Tall Ships Festival, Tall Ships event this weekend, as well as the Summer Folk Festival, which is also happening this weekend. And not too far around the corner will be the Salmon Spectacular. So we certainly are a city of festivals, and we look forward to hosting lots of our family, friends, and neighbors as we go through the last few weeks of this summer. So on, yes, we also have Councillor McManaman. You had another item.
I did, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering
Thank
if
you.
we could get an update from staff on the situation about the tennis courts at West Hill, the closed tennis courts at West Hill.
Thank you, Worship. On or about July 24th, I had an opportunity to meet with Janice Best from the school board, and we had an excellent meeting about not just the West Hill tennis courts, but other ways that the city can work with the school board in a positive way. And you'll see in the rec minutes tonight the agreement with West Hill with respect to the Hockey Canada Skills Program. So that's just one of those examples. We talked about specifically the West Hill tennis courts, and the issue is really one around liability and insurance and inspection. So we have this idea that if OMEX, our insurer, can be satisfied and cover the liability insurance of the courts during the daytime hours, and our park staff will open and close the courts and do an inspection when we open them to make sure that, you know, there's not glass or things that would create a hazard for public safety, that we can work together and have the courts open. I recognize that it's now August 12th. And the school board has been kind and offered to craft the agreement for our consideration. So perhaps, and I think the clerk is prepared with a bylaw this evening, if you would authorize or consider a bylaw to authorize the city manager, subject to OMEX approving the wording in the agreement that comes from the school board, that we could get that going before the end of the summer season and tennis.
Thank you very much for the update, Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. I think our timing is our issue here. If we're to wait for council to our next meeting is not till August 26th, I believe, and by the time that wording would come back here, the summer's over. So I would certainly, if a motion's required, that we authorize the city manager to sign an agreement pending approval, assuming it's a suitable agreement with our insurer, and we can get this issue put to rest sooner rather than later, if the agreement comes tomorrow or the next day. So that's what I would move, that we authorize the city manager to execute that agreement, and of course then bring it, it would still come to our August 26th meeting for our information, so everyone's aware of the details.
Councillor Lemon?
Oh, I think this is great, because this is a case where we've got to bypass the normal scheme of things in a timely manner. But my question is, are we contemplating a multi-year agreement on this, so this next summer we don't go through the same razzmatazz?
We'll go to the city manager.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Lemon, we will be providing a further report to discuss that matter.
Thank you. If these tennis courts could be opened tonight, I'd be happy, I think. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you to staff and Councillor McManaman for that quick action and focus on this particular community issue. We have no other items of other business, and thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Resolution adopting proceedings in committee of the whole, please.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Twaddle, the actions taken in committee of the whole and considering public meetings, deputations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports, matters tabled, motions for which notice was previously given, and other business be hereby confirmed by this council.
All those in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Notices of motion, new business by resolution, bylaws, please.
That bylaws number 2013-146 to 2013-149 and 2013-151 to 2013-155 be hereby passed and enacted, and that was moved by myself and seconded by Ian Body.
I got demoted.
That works.
You seem like hesitation.
Yes, it's colorful, but it's all correct. I have no doubt. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. We're now adjourned. Have a good evening.